If I'm a Laker fan, what makes me nervous this morning as I am starting off my day is this. Damian Lillard paced himself to grab your still beating heart and hold it up above your head late in the game. He knew that the Lakers didn't have the offensive firepower, that he was not required to completely come in and go full throttle throughout this game. He waited until it was Dame time, and then he took this game over. This is what it sounded like when the Lakers' back broke.
Dame top of the key takes another deep three. It's good from Dame distance. It is Dame time in the fourth quarter.
There you go. That was the shot that broke the Lakers and raises so many interesting questions going forward about the Lakers and LeBron and everything else surrounding their hoped-for defense of the legacy of the Lakers and LeBron's decision to go west and join one of the most storied franchises in all of sports. Now, it's early. It's one game. But this didn't feel like an aberration. The Bucks lost to the Magic, and if you watched any of that game, you may well feel like that wasn't really reflective of what's likely to happen in the series going forward. This was almost exactly what I thought would happen. I thought the Blazers would come out hot in the first quarter because they've been playing a lot of games that matter, and they would get up early. And then I expected that the Lakers would perform better than they did, not scoring 100 points and finding a way to lose this game, because make no mistake about it, the Lakers found a way to lose this game. They were up 6 points with around 4 minutes to go, which was the biggest lead they had in the entirety of the game, I believe. The Lakers shot 5 of 31 from 3. They're the only team to not hit 100 points in the playoffs in the first couple of nights. I just don't see how you can watch this team and think they are well-constructed or likely to win a championship this year. Now, again, there are lots of things that can change going forward, but when you look at the overall talent on this Laker team, and I know Rondo could come back, and I know there could be movement in terms of the team just not shooting as awful as they did, the trend lines are pretty consistent here. This has not been a team that played well in the bubble at all, and I want you to just think about the different playmakers that the Portland Trail Blazers have compared to what the Lakers have right now, okay? On any given night, I feel very good about the possibility of 4 Blazers going out and scoring 20-plus. C.J. McCollum, Damian Lillard, Nurkic, and, believe it or not, Carmelo Anthony. Especially Carmelo, because almost every shot he gets is wide open at this point, because Lillard and McCollum are so hard to defend. And that's not even counting Zach Collins, who's injured, but at times has the ability to make big plays. And it's not even counting Gary Trent Jr., who seems to throw in a crucial 3 in almost every game that the Blazers play. When you look at the Lakers, you have Antonio Davis, you have LeBron James, and then there's nobody else there. Kuzma at times can show up. He didn't show up very much last night. He had one stretch where he scored, I think, like 6 straight points for the Lakers, but otherwise 1 for 5 for 3 for 14 points. I want you to listen to everybody else that's on the Lakers team. Caruso, good defensive player, can be a role scorer, not a shooter. 0 for 3 from 3, 1 for 6 from the floor, 2 points. Morris, not much, right? Hit 1 big 3, 5 points, not much there. Dwight Howard, defensive player, shell of the player on the offensive side of the ball that he was at one point. Danny Green, not good enough to be the third best option on this team. Caldwell Pope is just pure trash. 29 minutes, 0 for 9 from the floor, 0 for 5 from 3. And JaVale McGee, like, again, good for an occasional layup, maybe a rebound and a putback. There's nobody who can go get their bucket. The third outlet here is really not very substantial. And I want you to think about this. The Lakers shot 15% from three, 35% from the floor, and LeBron still had 16 assists. How many assists would LeBron have had if he had a really good shooting team? And here's the other challenge. I don't think LeBron can play better. I really don't think he can do better than 23, 17, and 16. LeBron played his A-plus game. He was 12-1 in first-round games coming into this one in his career. First-round first games, I should say. 12-1 in the very first game of a series. He's now 12-2. I don't know exactly how this plays going forward because there is no ability out there right now to even quantify the home court advantage. Because ordinarily, if you lose game one at home and you fought all season to get the home court advantage, it matters a great deal. I really don't think that's going to be the case in any way going forward at all. So a loss really doesn't impact you in the same way. But similarly, you're now in game two not coming back for a massive, rabid home court environment. The Blazers could come out and win game two as well. Now, the flip side is going down 0-2 isn't as big of a deal because you're not going back on the road somewhere and walking into some fevered environment either. I think this is going to be more of a marathon and less of a sprint as you work your way through in this series. So, big win, huge win for the Portland Trail Blazers. If you are a Adam Silver right now or you are an NBA executive, you are absolutely terrified that the Blazers could come out and destroy your bubble ratings because if LeBron were to lose in the first round, a ton of people disappear and never come back when it comes to the NBA audience, which, by the way, is down 45%. So social media is not real life because there's so many cheerleaders for the NBA. Since 2012, the national audience for games for Major League Baseball and the NFL is relatively flat. In the NBA, it's down 45%. And then you toss in all of the politics that they are bringing to bear this year. And I know there are a lot of you listening to me right now saying, oh, Clay, I don't even care about the NBA at all because they've gone so fully woke that I'm not even going to put it on. I understand that argument. I watch every sport regardless of what the politics is that's being espoused. And last night's game and really the entire bubble performance by Damian Lillard has been otherworldly. He's been like Steph Curry on steroids. The shots that he takes and the shots that he hit are pretty extraordinary. And there was a lot of questions about whether maybe he had burned out all of his energy, all of his intensity, all of his ability to take over games just to get the Portland Trailblazers into the playoffs. But I got to say, having watched this game, again, he paced himself. I think the Trailblazers believe they are the better team here. I think they thoroughly expect to win this series. And the Lakers, I said before this season, this playoff series began that I thought it would go 6 and that the Lakers would win. I'm not going to change that prediction right now, but I'm starting to wonder whether 7 games is going to happen and whether it's going to take every ounce of the Laker ability to be able to get a win here. Let me bring in the crew. Danny G, you are the king of the Laker fans. What did you see? What have I missed so far in analyzing Game 1 from your perspective?
Well, going into this, we heard that the Trailblazers didn't have the defense to stop LeBron and AD. But I'm watching Hassan Whiteside, and he was a major factor in that game. In fact, watching the Trailblazers during the bubble and the nice run they went on, I couldn't help but at times watch Whiteside and think to myself, man, the Lakers should have traded for him. He's so good at the rim. He changed LeBron's shots a few times as LeBron drove. So got to give him a shout out because he definitely made a difference for their defense. But I kind of expected this going in just because the Lakers hadn't been playing like a one, and obviously the Trailblazers are not your run-of-the-mill 8. So
they were in the Western Conference Finals last year.
Right, and this felt more like a 2-4 type matchup where if the Clippers would have played, their players all throughout the season, they might have finished 1. Lakers might have finished 2. The way the Lakers were playing, though, going into March, they were on a roll. I mean, yeah, they're shooting struggle. They had their struggles at the three-point line and the free throw line, but overall, they found ways to get it done. And then they go into the bubble, and it was like they were completely cold. Their shooting was off. And if we've seen anything in Orlando, it's that it favors the sharp shooters. It's almost like without all those thousands of rowdy fans, you have more of a focus on just stroking your shot. And that's obviously played into the favor of the Trailblazers at the end of that game. I mean, you need to play to your strength, and when the Lakers were driving to the hoop and actually finishing at the hoop, they controlled the game. But at the end of the game, when LeBron and AD were taking step-back threes and missing those 4 free throws in a row, that's when I knew they were in trouble. So, they stayed the course as far as that third quarter with Lillard not being a big factor. You mentioned he came alive in the fourth.
I think he paced himself
when he needed to. I mean, I cringed when certain Lakers were switching late on him. We saw this. So were they not watching these bubble games? Because you cannot let Lillard get the ball cleanly past half court, because once he releases, he gets a shot off and it usually goes in. He's probably the best shooter right now in the NBA. And I couldn't help but miss Avery Bradley because he's our lockdown defender on the Lakers, and he would normally be the guy there also to take a big 3 for the Lakers at the end of the game. But he's not there. Lakers need to get past that. No excuses. They need to bounce back in the same way that Damian Lillard bounced back when the Clippers were teasing him on the court and torturing him on IG and Instagram and all that in their little feud they had. When Lillard missed those 2 important free throws to lose to the Clippers, you saw how he responded, and now LeBron and AD need to do that same thing, because those 4 straight free throws they missed at the end of the game, to me, was the difference there.
Those were big misses. But I would say for the Blazers, they feel like they're playing with house money right now. All throughout the bubble, they knew they had to play almost flawless basketball in order to advance into the playoffs at all. And I said this on Fox Bet Live on Lock It In coming into the game on Monday. I said what I really feel is that the Lakers now are trying to prove that they can win in the bubble. I feel like the Blazers know that they can. And unlike when they had to go, I mean, look, the Blazers now are 8-2 since they got to Orlando. And one of those losses, as you mentioned, the Blazers feel like they completely gave away down the stretch when Damian Lillard missed 2 free throws and really kind of took his game to the next level after that frustration and that failure. And you said that Damian Lillard is shooting out of his mind. I think right now Damian Lillard might be shooting as well as anyone has ever shot in the history of the NBA. That sounds like hyperbole, but the shots that he is taking, the degree of difficulty involved in them right now, I know Steph Curry revitalized the game and really kind of changed it by extending his range and proving that a great shooter can make shots from anywhere. But Damian Lillard has taken, to me at least, the Steph Curry angle and made it even wilder. Because if you remember, when Steph Curry started draining shots from all over the court, a big part of that was people weren't defending him because they thought, hey, this is not a makeable shot. Damian Lillard is getting defended basically, at least when he's defended well, the moment that he crosses half court. He's getting almost no open looks. There's almost no point in time where somebody breaks down the defense, kicks it to him, and there's nobody close to him. I mean, his man, it doesn't matter what happens anywhere else, is not leaving him. I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, 1 open 3 maybe that he had last night, and it just doesn't happen in the game, and yet he is hitting shots with a degree of difficulty, the likes of which I'm not sure we have ever seen before. And again, he scored 34 last night, and you felt like in general, for much of the game, he was not going full on because he knew he was going to be needed late in the game. And there was that, after that big three he hit, I think, to go up to put the Blazers up 3. We heard the audio from it. They flipped to the bench, and you could see Nurkic there tapping his wrist where ordinarily you would have a watch. And he said, it's Dame time. He feels like he's going to make the big shot. And by the way, CJ McCollum feels the same way. You have two guys who, it appears, believe that they can get their shot at any point in time that they need it. And look, with Nurkic coming back along, he had a ho-hum game, it felt like, and he went for 16 and 15. You mentioned Whiteside and what he's capable of from a defensive perspective. I would say this about LeBron. At 35 years old, he is still an unbelievable player. But when he gets to the rim now, he doesn't always finish like he used to finish. And that's probably the biggest criticism I think you can make of LeBron's game, which is almost non-existent in terms of criticism. Watch when he gets to the rim, and not just because you got a guy like Whiteside who will come out of nowhere and block a shot pretty regularly. He had some incredible plays, Whiteside did. But LeBron just, it feels like a lot of times now he gets to the rim, but he's not able to finish in the same way he was in his 20s. He just doesn't have that extra jolt of energy that's necessary to rise up and be able to finish. If you go back and watch and you just put together a series of clips of LeBron getting to the basket last night and not finishing, I don't think you would have seen very many of those when he was still in his 20s. What stood out to you, Dub, about this game?
Well, a lot of things stand out. Obviously, 5 for 32 from 3. You're probably not going to beat anybody with those numbers. Also, Anthony Davis, I mean, he had a great first half, 21 points, I believe, in the first half. He finished with 28, so he only had 7.
And a lot of those points, by the way, for Anthony Davis were from the free throw line. He really didn't dominate like I anticipated he would inside.
Absolutely. I mean, Hassan Whiteside, Danny G was right. Hassan Whiteside was maybe, obviously other than Lillard, his role he played on the defensive end was probably MVP status for this game because he was absolutely shutting people down at the rim, making life incredibly difficult for the Lakers. And you touched on this, that there's no shooters. And I've watched Danny Green play a lot, obviously, as a former Spur. He is an incredibly streaky shooter. And last night he didn't have it. Who knows what happens next time, but if the Lakers are going to win this series, they need someone to step up from the outside and make some three-point shots. And Danny Green is probably going to have to be that guy, and he can be that guy. But last night, 2 for 8 from 3 is not going to get it done. And you're right, I have no idea how LeBron had 16 assists. When you take a look at some of these shooting numbers from the Lakers, he could have had 25 if they had even just a decent shooting night last night.
Yeah, and that's the Rondo edition. Everybody knows Rondo shoots threes like he's throwing grenades. You have no idea what's going to happen. It's been his case for his entire career. Everybody lags off of him. If anything, that is not going to change very much the likelihood of anybody making threes for the Lakers. They just don't have that player. And I wonder on some level whether, LeBron has usually always had a Kyle Korver-like guy who you could completely rely on to be able to make outside shots, and that player just doesn't exist. And you're right, maybe Danny Green's going to get streaky, maybe Caldwell Pope will come in and hit some threes as well. Somebody's going to have to. I don't feel like Game 2 is a must win for the Lakers, and what I mean by that is ordinarily you'd have to be at home and win Game 2 or the season would be over. But now that every game is effectively the same, I don't feel like it's impossible for the Lakers to go out and win 4 out of 5 if they lose Game 2. But I do feel like psychologically, this Blazer team winning Game 1 and winning it in a way, again, I just look at the way Damian Lillard played, it was as if he expected to win this game and knew exactly how it was going to go down. The self-confidence that the Blazers are playing with and the confidence that they all have in Damian Lillard. I mean, just witness the 2 big threes that got drained by other guys. Carmelo Anthony drained that 3. Great pass from Lillard, I believe it was, to put the Blazers up 6. And then Gary Trent Jr., who'd missed shots all game, he just stepped up and hit the dagger 3 that basically ended this thing. And again, LeBron had been 12-1 in Game 1s of first-round series. Now he's 12-2, And I just think what we saw was the Laker pratfalls being exposed. What about you, Eddie Garcia? Did you even watch this? Welcome back. And did you even watch this game, or were you watching hockey instead?
Well, I monitored it, which is to say I checked in occasionally, but I'm watching the hockey playoffs.
Yeah.
But I will, just as a very casual NBA fan, say that this doesn't surprise me because Portland's been in playoff mode for weeks and the Lakers have been going through the motions. So I just...
The intensity level was substantially different right out of the gate.
Right. So as it goes on in a 7-game series, you would think that LeBron and Anthony Davis in the end will be more than Damian Lillard can overcome, but we'll see.
What about you, Roberto? As a Laker fan, you nervous?
No, not yet. But the Lakers were terrible. I mean, you said LeBron did play an A+ game, but his game in the fourth quarter was an F- and missed those 2 free throws after Anthony.
I think LeBron burned himself out. I do, because he had to work so hard to keep the Lakers in this game. I was texting with buddies watching this game, and I sent that, like in the second and third quarter, I felt like LeBron went to the tank early, and I think he may have burned himself out a little bit late, as the opposite of Damian Lillard, who seemed as if he were making sure he was ready. He still had his legs for late.
I got to also admit, I wasn't the biggest LeBron James fan before he came to the Lakers, and one of the things that always bugged me about how he got all this praise and saying people said he was better than Jordan or better than Kobe was how he always does this in games in playoff games where he misses fourth quarter free throws, and he did it in this game with the Lakers, and then a clutch 3-pointer that he missed down the stretch was also crucial.
He took the 1-3, what was Damian Lillard distance? I think that was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, towards 4 minutes left in the game.
Felt like a totally wasted possession when he pulled up from there and tried to take that 3, and it seemed to